Hi there, this is Carl Irwin, and we're going to take a look at film score tutorial here. We're going to work with timing, setting some timing. Previously, we talked about tempo and selecting tempo, and I did a brief demonstration, all just to say you should pick your tempo based upon the emotional quality and the action quality of the film rather than any other um, calculation. That's just my opinion. There's a lot of people who will use tools to select tempos based upon a calculation of hit points, action hits. But I strongly prefer to just write music based upon the general sense of the film, devoid of any calculation. And then using changing of meters to acquire synchronization with those hit points, those action hits or emotional hits that you need to address. And it's the second part that we're going to look at today. This is what I want to spend time on, is altering meters to create synchronization. A lot of people prefer or request live tutorials where you're doing things live in the moment rather than a walkthrough, what I call a walkthrough tutorial, where something's already been done and the instructor just kind of walks you through how it's constructed in its state. I prefer to do walkthroughs for the simple fact that doing things live takes time. You know, when you're doing something live and you're really doing it, there's a lot of considerations that go into making choices, and not every choice is a quick choice. I think that some people prefer to see those kinds of demonstrations as a demonstration of speed in accomplishing something, but that's not really what we're ever after. We're after consideration and analysis, right? Decision making. We're after making right decisions, not making fast ones. So I am going to try to do this live, but there's some caveats here. I'm not going to just compose live. I've already composed some material that is going to be a basis, and this is actually, I think, a fair starting point for a live demonstration on tempo mapping. Very common way to work in film music is that kind of, you write separate from the picture, then you bring in that core material, a very basic idea. Maybe it's a theme, maybe it's a treatment of a theme in a particular situation, and you take that material, very basic, very generic kind of phrase, and then you augment it and adjust it and move it around to picture. So we're going to do that. This is the picture we're going to look at. So I'll just show you this little segment, and I'm going to demonstrate a few technical things here related specifically to MuseScore and the VLC synchronization plugin that I'm using right now for writing film music inside of MuseScore. It's kind of the most current tool that is cross-platform and fairly robust. And I'm going to look at a few features in here related to timing and offset that you may be curious about. So here's the shot, the scene, and we have a close-up of a woman, some eerie shots of a house, corridor, kind of a dilapidated house. Some interesting abstract reveals here in the footage. So we go back to the close-up of the woman, and then another long kind of hallway or long room shot at a window. It's got a slight Dutch angle to it. And then this final reveal, you can see the woman being tormented in some kind of way. It's a kind of a ghost sort of imagery. So that's the shot, that's the scene. Now you can see the video is actually over 6 minutes long. Now what I did here is I just threw together a bunch of clips and footage from Pixabay to make that scene, and then I surrounded it with a bunch of other random footage, random clips of different things. And this is a nonsense video, okay? Apart from kind of the narrative you can get from the sequence that we're looking at, just to demonstrate the capability of the plugin here. Now, this would work with whatever software you're using, notation software, digital audio workstation, whatever you use that does video synchronization, there'll be comparable controls. In here, inside of the VLC plugin, which I have loaded right here, I can go to the settings, and my video sequence is going to start at 4 minutes and 59 seconds, and I have that marked here at the beginning of the cue. So at the very beginning of the project, I wrote, I typed in where I want this to start that I can reference in subsequent loadings of this session, and I would put that in here, and I did. So I've put in here under minutes, 4 minutes and 59 seconds. Now, this plugin operates on the whole second value. It doesn't work in milliseconds in terms of seeking. There is a millisecond delay, which I'll talk about here in a second, but you're always going to be referencing a whole second. Now, some people initially, when this came out, had some concern about the accuracy of this, that it seems to be an approximation of time rather than an accuracy of time, because obviously whenever you're working with film, most video editors will work to the frame. If there's 24 frames per second, which I think this video is 30 frames per second, you'd be dealing with the minutes, the seconds, and then the frame value that you're on within a second. And a lot of digital audio workstations, you'll drop in markers that will be frame accurate. Now, the issue here, or the reply I give to this, is that this is not approximate. This is not an approximation of time. This is accurate time. It's just that you're dealing with a beginning point always of a whole second value. So the score will have to begin at a whole second, but that doesn't mean that your music has to be timed to the whole second. There is some moving around that you can do in the initial measure in terms of meter or tempo to give yourself a buffer or an alignment for the beginning of the cue. You just want to make sure that the video beginning point is at a whole second value prior to where you want the music to start. And this is, very typical in a digital audio workstation where you would nudge video to line up with the beginning of a specific measure that you want to start at. It's just that instead of nudging the video, we're nudging the score in terms of this initial measure or measures to kind of set where we want music to begin. So that is something we'll deal with here in a moment. But this is the whole second beginning. I can set that inside of VLC, inside of the plugin for VLC. And then the second thing here is this item, the millisecond. So on the millisecond offset, this is for VLC to delay its beginning whenever I press play in the plugin. When I hit play in the plugin, VLC will delay 90 milliseconds before it actually actuates, before it starts. This is important because they're system by system, the Play Engine and MuseScore, and this is true of other notation programs and even of digital audio workstations in terms of latency, there may be a delay in the response of the Play Engine, and you need to account for that. Now, I know that for this system, as I have here in my project, I'm on my HP Elite 1. This is an i7 with my software set up, and this system, it's a 90 millisecond delay. Now, curiously, this is a far more powerful system than another machine that I use frequently. I use 4 or 5 different systems at different times, but these are my personal ones that I use most of the time. I use an Inspiron Dell laptop, which is a lower power. It's an i5. It's got less RAM. That one is a 15 millisecond delay, which is very, very interesting. That I would have to delay much more on the more powerful system, but based on testing, this is what it is. I'm not going to get into the testing right now. It's a simple matter of rendering out some hits, maybe beat 1 hits at a tempo, maybe 120 beats per minute, to a WAV file, loading that into VLC, playing it back with the score, and then setting this until it aligns properly, and then that gives you your delay amount. So that's a very generic description of what you do, but that's how you kind of find this, and it is pretty stable. You want to check this every now and then, because as you update your sounds, or if you upgrade the software, that might change because the play engine quality might change. And it may not necessarily just have to do with the play engine. It might also have to do with how VLC is responding to the plugin, because on particular systems, VLC might already be a little bit delayed, and that will factor into whatever you set this at. The play engine will always be a little bit behind. So the key is to get VLC to play in a delayed fashion to line up with the play engine playback. In this case, 90 milliseconds. I have everything set. Hit save and exit, and we're ready to go. Now, no matter where I click in the video, whenever I hit the rewind button on the plugin, it will jump to the whole second, 4 minutes, 59 seconds. That will be the beginning of the score, and my millisecond delay will be accurate whenever I play back. So we are now aligned. Now, this is just a good point of practice in terms of timing, is to drop in markers whenever you need to. Really, the only whole second timing marker that you'll need will be the one at the very beginning of the session. After that, markers will be more generic. They won't really apply specifically to moments in time, specifically frame accurate moments in time, but more so generically at this beat, something is happening that you observe, and you can write that in. So that way, if you want to, if something changes in your video, if you get an updated cut, which happens often, it used to be that a composer would work with more of a final cut or a fine cut or a finished cut, not with a rough cut or an animatic. But today, because of technology, we work with animatics all the time. And in every movie that I work on, all the short films that I work on, I'm working from the very first rough cut and animatics at the starting point. And the video is going to change quite drastically sometimes. So by adding in little markers that indicate in the picture what is happening, when things change, I can bring the old score into a new session, and I can see what is supposed to align with what. And I don't have to remember this all. I can have it actually marked in, and I can better kind of keep track of what I'm doing. So that's what the situation is with timing, at least in this format inside of MuseScore 4 and the VLC synchronization. Now, let's look at the music real quick. So I have a template here. The template is really just for me. This is not going to be played by anybody. I'm always in concert pitch, big time signatures, and this is my template. I usually have single staves per instrument group. Things are grouped together by family. I usually include a brass synth to accentuate hard hits that I want to, add some synth support to, which is pretty common in film scoring, actually. I have a couple of condensed percussion parts, percussion 1, percussion 2, timpani, and it covers kind of the gamut of all the percussion sounds that I want. I like to write with Celesta and piano. I don't usually use harp. I just stopped writing for harp, and it's just become part of my sound. So that's not in my template. I typically just use these instruments. And then I have my string complement, and I've got section strings plus solo strings on top as layers, so that I can pop out a solo, and also I get a greater depth in my sound. So that's my template that you're looking at. I typically write to strings first. I might use the piano staves to kind of rough out harmonic changes, but I usually will write condensed to strings first. This music was written completely separate from the video. I didn't time anything out. I didn't even really think about exactly how long, just kind of a generic, maybe 2/8 measure phrase kind of, amount of time in terms of timing. And I wrote something that was going to be in the character of what I was looking at. And it was the footage is kind of sickly to me. It's kind of sick. It's kind of nauseated. It's kind of, I don't know, melancholy, depressed, there's an angst there, maybe a mental illness, a mental sickness, a spiritual kind of element to it, of spiritual discord. And I didn't really think functionally. Really, what this is, a harmonic rhythm of 2 measures per chord quality in general. So every 2 measures, the chord quality is kind of changing. And I'm using diminished quality chords, half diminished quality chords that are moving around and pretending to be functional. It's not really functional harmony, but it's pretending to be that way, using these constantly condensed harmonies. And this is what I came up with. Now, there's obviously some repeating shapes in the line, but not really a melody. It's very, I don't know, I guess it's sort of very Bernard Herrmann-esque in a way, very similar to some of that kind of melancholy music that you get from Vertigo or Psycho, or the kind of the big Hitchcock pictures that he did. It's that kind of music. That's what I saw in the picture. So now the key is to take this music and get it to match in a supportive way to the film. So let's open up our film and we'll jump back to the beginning. Let's just play this and see how it fits, to see, are there any happy accidents? Because that's something worth evaluating. Did something accidentally work out? Now, I do not want to leave this music like this because it's very predictable in terms of the timing. You have quarter, quarter, half, quarter, half, quarter, quarter, half, right? Quarter, half. And you have this kind of repeated thing going on that's chugging along. We're going to want to change this in a way so that some of the expression that comes out of it is in shifts in timing. Right now, there's no shift in timing. This is very regimented, timed music. And we don't really want that. It's not going to serve our picture well. Now, curiously, this is very, very dull the way it is. And as we modify this, hopefully, as we modify this to match picture in different ways, it's actually going to improve the music considerably. This is something that is very unique to film music composition, is that as you match music to picture, often, I find, the timing of the music and the matching of the music actually improves the music. You can take a fairly mediocre idea, and because of the input and the support that the music is supposed to give to the picture and the direction that the picture gives to the music, it actually makes the music better as an outside creative force acting upon it. And that's a very, very interesting thing that you can really only find in media music composition, the way that the media itself improves upon the music. So let's see that happen here. Go back to the beginning. We'll play this back as is with that measure buffer. So you can see that it plays longer than the video. We're going to have to tighten this down, change the meter to make things fit a little bit. All right, so off the bat, let's just, for the point of the exercise, let's see if we can get this first hit, the first note, to actually arrive when the shot first comes up. So let's take a quick look again. I'm going to play this, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to watch the opening bars here and watch the playhead move along. And I want to see if I can identify the moment when the playhead, where the playhead is at when that shot opens up. Okay, so jump back and we'll hit play. So it seems to be right about between beat 2 and beat 3. So the first thing I'm going to do is just shorten this down. I'm going to select the first measure. We'll go to palettes, go to time signatures. I'm going to make this 4/4, but back here I'm going to run this down to 2/4, and then I'm going to delete the extra measure that's in there. We've retained all of our information. Be careful when you're deleting measures. If you have markers in there, you don't want to delete the measure that has the marker in it. Okay, so we have our 2/4 bar now. Let's try this again. We'll jump back to the beginning. Okay, so we're still a beat late. I might take this down to just a 1 bar, so it's just a single beat. I'm going to create a time signature because we don't actually have that one in the palettes. And we'll hit add and close that out. And I'll select my 1/4, delete the second one. Make sure we kept all of our markers, and try this again, see if we're closer just with 1 beat. So it's a little bit late, the music. Try that again. Actually, the music's a little bit ahead. So let's try one more thing here. We're at 72 beats per minute, so it's a little faster than the beat per second. Let's change this to, so we have 2/8, let's say it's called a 3/8 bar. And we'll put a 3/8 on there. Try that. Okay, so now we have synchronization. Now, this may seem approximate, and it is approximate, but all film music synchronization is approximate. The general rule about synchronization in terms of sound and visual is that there is a margin of about 0.2 of a second that you have that sound will be related psychologically to something visual happening. And this could go either way. It could be 0.2 of a second prior or 0.2 of a second after. So you have about 0.4 of a second surrounding something. Now, I will say that the sound coming after the visual is preferable. The sound coming after the visual is preferable to coming before, but within 0.2 of a second before, whatever you hear, you could have a jump scare where the sound comes 0.2 of a second prior to the visual thing happening, and that association will still be made. The visual will be made with the sound, or if it's after, the sound will be made with the visual. We want to go on or after, and we have that. I think we have that. It's clearly on or after the visual arrival of that shot. It's quite dead on. Okay, so that's the first thing that we're going to line up. Now what we want to do is let's go through this and see if we can find the next thing we want to hit. Now, a couple things I want to point out about selecting hits. And this is my opinion. This isn't, this is my opinion based on experience. I think that 7 times out of 10, that's a weird probability there. You're going to want to focus more on the emotional reaction than the physical reaction. Don't underestimate the value of responding musically with what is happening emotionally and not physically. That is to say that a character is clearly thinking something in a moment, even though there's nothing visually to indicate that. The unspoken understanding is that there is a thought process or an emotional process going on And in response to that, the music can do something. And in doing something, it will support that emotional response even more, or that intellectual thing that's happening. So as we look for hit points here, you want to think about the emotional side of it, not just the physical side of it. The seriousness of the project, or the weight of the project, or the topic will determine where you should be spending your weight, where you want to be putting your thumb on the scale, as I like to say, okay, in terms of the visual versus the emotional. So let's find a few more hit points, and they're not always going to be visual. Sometimes they'll be emotional, okay? Let's watch this again. We have our opening. It's a very bad opening, first of all. This is not good music. It's very abrupt. I would say up to this point, right here, right up to this point, everything is kind of a happy accident. Things are kind of lining up. Now, there's a problem in that the music is, again, too predictable in terms of timing. There's not enough shift. We're going to kind of create an artificial rubato, okay, where we're stealing time away and giving time back. We're going to do this with meter more than tempo changes. We're going to keep the same tempo for the ease of calculation, but we're gonna change the meter. Let me just mark this real quick. So one thing you might want to do is put in double bar lines to kind of denote sections that you're working inside of. Let's go back here to the very first shot. Now the first thing I notice is that this shot change is kind of halfway through this idea. Let's go back to this again. Maybe what we'll do is we'll elongate this measure here. And we're going to steal time back later on. So I'm going to, because we want this to kind of be related to the stuff coming after that moment. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 4/4 bar in. I'm going to add another beat to this one. Make this a 5/4. And I'm going to select these notes, these half notes. We'll make them dotted halves. And we'll also tie them to the next note. Because it's actually the same note, I think, for all of these. So put a tie on there. That's something that can be very beneficial in stretching things out. And down here, we're going to select these notes. I'm going to make these half notes. And then down here, just to be consistent, we're going to stretch this out to 5 beats. Real quick, I have a sub bass down here. This is actually a warm synthesizer sound that I put an octave below the contrabasses, and it's mixed very, very low. So it just adds an extra subconscious rumble. If you have a good sound system, you'll feel this more than hear it, but it's there just to make the sound a little bit bigger. I do that generally all the time for contrabasses. I put that in. So here we have a 5/4 going to a 4/4, and we've extended this beat. Let's just see how this plays in terms of the feeling of this. The other thing we might want to do now that we're getting emotional about this, let's take this first dynamics, and we're gonna change them. Let's take this down to take it down to pianissimo, and we'll make a crescendo happen. We'll go out here to this downbeat. And we're going to add in, let's take this all the way up to I'm thinking of like an accordion chords kind of sensation. So things kind of stretch out and get louder, and then they compress and get softer. And with each phrase that we're giving here, even though the phrases are uneven. I'm going to put, let's say, we don't get too loud yet. Let's just take this up to piano. We're going to be very subtle with it. And then I'm going to select this whole area in this first measure. And we'll add a crescendo leading up to that. And let's just check our timing here real quick. Okay, so now what we have is a change that's happening here on the shot. We've extended a beat. We've added a beat here to this measure. We have a change on the shot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to a 4/4 bar. And I'm going to turn this into a 3/4. I'm going to steal that beat back. And then I'll just delete this next measure. Now you'll note that there's actually a note in here that I'm getting rid of. That's okay. It's not a big deal, okay? We don't have to have the exact same thing being stated all the time. So we're just going to kind of throw this at the wall and see if it sticks. I'm going to select this measure and delete it. And let's just see what we have in terms of flow here. The harmonic rhythm is still the same. It's still going to move on two measures. And now another happy accident is we have a change happening roughly in the same place when we get to this beat as well. So let's just take advantage of this real quick. Go down the line, and we'll put in a new dynamic. This is going to be a bigger dynamic than the last one. Let's put this up to mezzo piano, and we'll deal with this down here as well. I'm going to put a quarter note. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just have this happen early, just for the sake of simplicity. This will be one beat early. And the other thing I want to do is I want to bring the dynamic back down. So right here, I'm going to go down the first beat of this measure. And I'm going to put the pianissimo back in. And I'll put pianissimo down here on these whole notes. And I'm going to bring the dynamic back. So from here, the last two beats, we'll bring the dynamic down. Then we're going to bring the dynamic up, but we're going to arrive at a higher dynamic here. Select here, over to beat 2. And we'll select these two measures completely. Okay, now let's listen to this and see how this works. Now, it seems to work okay for now, and this is another truth that I highly recommend you get used to with any creative process. You move on when things are good enough. They don't have to be perfect. You can always circle back for perfect. It's like taking a test where you're uncertain of a particular question. You don't just sit and stare at that question for the next 20 minutes and waste your time. You either skip it or give your best answer, make a marking there so you can come back to it, move on with the test, and then come back if you have time. So we're gonna circle back around maybe and address some other issues we don't like about this, but right now let's just deal with the dynamics. I want the dynamics to be a little bit more bold. So I'm going to change these to mezzo piano, and then over here, these mezzo pianos, we're going to change to mezzo forte. And let's move on from here. I think what I want to do here is we're going to try the same trick that we did earlier where we're going to add a beat in. So let's make this a 4/4 for the moment. It is already a 4/4, but we'll put a time signature in so that we can adjust the one ahead of it. And we'll grab these notes just like before. We'll make these dotted half notes. Put our ties in, grab these quarters and make them half notes. And we will throw in quarter notes to round out these 5/4 bars down here. And then let's check the timing here real quick. Yeah, this is fine. Let's change this again, just like we did before. We're going to change this to a 3/4 bar. And we'll delete the second bar. And I'm going to place a dynamic shift here on beat 1. We're going to go up to forte. And here I'm going to bring this down, beat 1 on this measure, to mezzo piano. We're not going to go all the way to the basement again. We'll take these 2 beats. We'll add our decrescendo. Let's deal down here with the bass part. And add our forte down here. We'll put our crescendo on this whole measure. All right, let's listen to this from the beginning real quick. I think what I want to do here, we're going to ignore this limitation that we've made over here. I want this to extend longer than before coming into the next one. And I want to extend it quite a bit. Let's listen to that one more time. In fact, I think what I want to do is I want to make this a 5/4 bar. And I'm going to take everything and move it over one beat. Take these first notes. Make them half notes. And then I'm going to take these notes and make them half notes. So everything's going to feel like it really slows down here briefly. Turn these into whole notes. Add our quarters back in. Now if I click and select here, you can see what I'm doing. I think that's the other thing about doing things live is it's very hard to follow along, but if I'm using my mouse, at least you can see what I'm clicking on. Okay, so now we have an extended line. Now the idea, let me explain my reasoning here. There's no person here, so going for emotional hits is kind of impossible. But you do have the revelation of some things, and rather than hit the revelation of this hole in the wall head on, we're going to let it appear, and then we're going to accentuate it in response with a shift in the music. So listen to this. See how this works. Okay, so you see, it's kind of holding out, and then it appears fully, and then the music moves after it shows up, as if it matters, right? And it doesn't. It's just abstract here, but you kind of see the idea. And this could be a person, making a certain expression or responding to a line, or pondering something, and the music kind of waits for that image to sink in first, and then it responds to it at a gut, heart, brain kind of level, rather than at uh, a slapstick level, where it's just responding to a physical thing happening. Let's go on from here. How do I want to deal with dynamics on this? I think I really want to bring this down a lot in terms of dynamics, but not until this note, not until the half note. So we'll put actually, where do I want it to come down to? Yeah, we'll put on the very beginning of this measure. Let's bring it all the way down to maybe a piano. And same for here. Piano. I'm not going to allow the decrescendo to happen until this last beat, but on here, for the half note, we'll bring it down. And then I want to take it further. Let me see about the arrival of this beat right here. What happens when we get to that? I might actually steal some time back here and make this the 3/4 bar. Let's try this. And then we're going to arrive here. All the way down at our pianissimo. And we'll select this measure in its entirety. Put a decrescendo down to pianissimo. Let's see what this arrival looks like. Now you see what's happening is we roughly get that hit. Let's look at that one more time. So far we haven't changed our tempo. Happy accident is that this movement's happening right as that door starts to move. So that might be a good place to put a dynamic change. Let's grab this first note and we'll bump it up to mezzo piano. And I want the dynamic to happen, well, we'll just, I guess we have a whole note here. We'll have it move. Maybe for these notes, we'll have it move up, but for down here, we won't let this move until the second half of the measure. So it's a little bit more sudden. Now this is a particularly eerie thing. So what I might do, we'll start messing with the music itself. I'm going to take this violin and I'm going to move it up an octave. So put a little bit of a space in there as if there's some rebowing going on. Let's see what this sounds like. I think it works. I might bump this dynamic up. Yeah, so there's a clear change happening there. Another thing I'm considering about this 3/4 bar, I don't like how this chugs through the quarter notes. So something I might try here is to change the rhythm. So I'm going to take the first quarter notes, beat 1, and we're going to turn these into dotted quarter notes. I'm going to take the 8th note left over and turn that into also a dotted quarter note, so eliminating the 3rd note there, and that just makes a little bit more of a stretch coming down to that. See how this works out. Good. Okay, so that's working out nicely. Let's look at the timing here, picking up from this spot. Okay, that's major happy accidents happening there. There's a lot of things that are hitting, and that's nice. We don't need to fix things that aren't really broken. What we do need to go in is kind of finesse this and nuance it a little bit so that it's a little bit more intentional in terms of the things that are happening. I'm going to take these notes, pop them up an octave to kind of continue this line. I might even try to push the dynamic on this. And, as this is coming into that, returning to the image of the woman, we don't really know the situation yet. I'm not sure we ever know the situation, but as it comes into that shot of the woman, you get a sense of isolation, and then this solo string pops in. So there's a little bit of reinforcement there in terms of the voicing with this little trick. Let's start here. Okay. I want to see if we can try to get off of these quarter notes and try to get into some other rhythm, especially as we build into the final shot. Let's go out there. So this happens nicely right on that. Right here on this beat. The frame changes to the shot, and then this beat happens, which is a very nice transition. But there's a revelation here of something we haven't seen yet with these hands on this fabric. So we want to accentuate the kind of this as the arrival, right? This is what the whole scene is about, is arriving at this point in this visual presentation. I might do this, pop this off, and take this part up again an octave. And I might do the same with the solo violin 2. Take that up the octave. So now we're going to kind of expand out our ensemble a little bit. We have a couple of players playing an octave above their sections. Let's see what that does to it. And then we'll deal with rhythm here again in a second. Okay, and this could be a fade into the next shot, which we'll deal with in a moment. I want to change the rhythm here. Maybe get some eighth notes in. Let's try this real quick. I'm going to take the first note here, make it an eighth note. I'm going to take the second note and paste it in. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Should just be one beat there, one quarter note. Okay, and we're going to make that an eighth note. And I'm going to take this and move it back. Oops, back one more. And we'll make that a dotted half note. And I might take these just to kind of create a cross rhythm change here. We'll make this a dotted quarter note syncopation. You probably wouldn't read it that way. You might put in a tied, but just for simplicity, we'll do that. Let's see what this sounds like in context if we go back here. I think this will work if we're coming up to if there's a swell in this. So we need to dissipate. I'm going to select these measures. And we're going to do a decrescendo. So we're coming down from mezzo piano for most of these instruments. And we'll select the first note. I'm going to bring this down to piano. Piano here. And we're going to drive this up to beat 2 up to forte. And we'll put out here beat 3 forte. Down here we'll put next measure forte. So everybody gets there eventually. Now, it's good. I think it's a good moment to talk about the unorthodox use of dynamics here. We're creating a mock-up. This is not being created for people to read. You wouldn't have so many dynamics. You probably would just have expressive terms and then there'd be interpretation from a conductor, right? But here, in order to get the performance that we want, we really have to hypernotate everything. If we want a swell to happen, we're going to have to put that into the notation. So a lot of these dynamics are superfluous and wouldn't be there in a real notation given out to real players with a conductor. The conductor would be interpreting things, individual musicians would be interpreting things and applying the musicality to it. But here we have to tell the program exactly what we want it to do and exactly when we want it to do it. Let's see what this sounds like here. We haven't had any articulation changes either. That works out really well. I did notice another thing here in terms of timing. Might be helpful to delay this change. If we take these notes at least and make them a half note, we're going to have a tie on beat 4 for these notes. Now, we didn't mess with this one down here. We might need to. Let's see what this sounds like and how it goes with the picture. It kind of works. It aligns better with the shot change. We don't have to hit every single one, but we do have an opportunity here to hit one. In fact, it might be helpful because there's so much motion going on in these viola and cello parts all the way through. It's like constant chunking along. Let's just change this up here. We have same note, 2 beats later. Let's just turn these into dotted half notes, and we're going to rest kind of on this and let the upper voices move. Let's see how this sounds. Okay, now one thing we want to do here, I'm going to tie these common notes. What this does, by the way, you'll see me do this a lot. This is something I learned in composition school years ago, is that if you have repeating notes that don't need to repeat, and there's something else that's changing over top of it when the repetition happens, tie it. You don't have to repeat the note, right? Unless you're trying to accentuate that beat or that rhythmic moment by having everything universally change. If you're trying to accentuate it, then fine. However, if you have something that is repeating, merely repeating, tie it and allow another voice to be noticed in its change. So I just in practice, I do that as often as I can. Tie things that are not necessarily moving. I'm gonna follow along with this idea and put the same rhythmic figure here. So we're gonna have eighth notes moving down. And over here, I did it. Yeah, we'll do it for all of these notes. So I'm gonna turn that into an eighth note. Grab beat 2. Paste it here on the and beat 1. And we'll make these into an eighth note. And I'm going to grab this beat 3 and move this over to beat 2. And we'll make these dotted half notes. And then here, I think what I did before is I made a dotted quarter note, I think is what I did. So we'll do the same thing again. Be consistent with it. Now, the other thing I might do, let me see where this happens in the timing. Let's really accentuate this. We haven't really done anything with, this is a moment where I'm going to get rid of this tie. We haven't done anything with articulation. I'm going to put in some staccato accents. And then I'm going to go to tremolo. We'll put in staccato accent here. Accent on this one. Staccato accents on these. And then I'm going to try, let's do our dotted quarter change here. So it's going to be, the sensation will be that it's slowing down. And I might even take these notes and tie them in. Okay, so we're slowing down into this moment. And I'm going to put accents on these. Accent here. Let's see what this sounds like. It's comically bad. So let's change this. Rather than have... I'm going to leave that one actually. Rather than have these as staccato accents, we're going to just make them accents. Okay, also what we want to do is we want to arrive here at a new dynamic. We're going to put fortissimo. And the build is going to be late in the measure. Except for here. Okay, good. Over here, I'm going to come back to those tremolos in a second. I'm going to put a decrescendo. We're going to take this to the basement for the fade. This is something you do on a cue, is you can put a fade that's long that can be truncated and faded in integration. Whenever you take all the cues and you put them together in a video editor, you can actually change how they integrate together on the, they call it a tail out. This is a tail out. So you can have a stop, you can have a tail out, a tail in, or a fade in. This is a tail out, and we're going to put a very low dynamic. In fact, I like to do this just for the play engine to get it almost down to nothing. I don't know if you can actually select for all these. Maybe you can't. You might have to do this for each one. I wonder if I could do this. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. There's probably a better way to do this that I don't know. Tell me in the comments. All right. So now we're arriving at a very, very low dynamic. All right, let's come back to these guys. What I want to do on these is we're going to put a decrescendo on them. I'll put an attack on this at forte. I think we want let's see if I can put an accent on this, how that affects these. Might have to dig into this and notate exactly what we want. All right, it works. It's a little loud for the fortissimo one, so I'm going to put a forte on those. I might even work, a mezzo forte might work on those better. Yeah, so let's do this. Let's test out a mezzo forte just to get the right balance on the playback engine. Pull up the different sample set. Good. Let's bring these down to forte. I might even bring these down to mezzo piano. Maybe what this needs is some tremolo as well. Really brings this out. We haven't focused on the bass a lot. Let's do something here. This was supposed to be fortissimo. I don't know how we lost those. Maybe I don't need to put those in. Get rid of these accents. All right, let's try this. We'll listen to this now. Yeah, that works real nicely. So we have the basses are kicking out and they're being featured here, and the doom and gloom moment. We don't have a dynamic set here, so just for consistency's sake, I'm going to put one in on these parts that are coming down from mezzo piano. We'll put a piano on there. Give it one more listen. We'll listen to all of it all together. So we did some meter changes. We did a lot of dynamic changing. We did some articulations in there. Look, we didn't really change the music all that much, and we didn't even deal with the rest of the orchestra. We just kept to the strings. But this is, this is the process. You come up with a general concept, and then you kind of force that general concept into the space that you're given inside of the picture. Here's the whole thing. There's a ton more that could be done with this, right? There's a lot more, some things that could be finessed further, maybe things that could be made more subtle. But this is the general process, and you don't have to work from the beginning. As I pointed out, you can actually work way down the line. The key, though, is that you need to preserve your time. If you're going to be adding beats, you want to take them away somewhere else. If you're taking something, we need to add it back so that you can preserve time down the line. And we did all of this without changing tempo, yet with some of the metrical changes, because or rather some of the note value changes inside of the meter changes, we're implying slowing down and speeding up. Adding in those eighth notes implies a speeding up, even though the tempo's not changing. Adding in the dotted quarter values in the right place implies a slowing down. Or adding an extra beat, an extended beat onto a note inside of a 5/4 bar implies a slowing down into something. And this is all done with the click remaining absolutely the same. Again, we're not creating this for real performers, but if you were, that's a device that's very useful. They're listening to a click that does not shift, it does not move, and everything does align properly metrically to what they're looking at on the page. And that can be very beneficial in terms of live recording. And a lot of film scores, traditional film scores that do use live performers, will use these kinds of tools in terms of meter and hemiola syncopation in order to imply a shifting of time that isn't actually there. And that's very beneficial when you're trying to preserve things way down the line in the score. If you have a cue, this cue was not very long, it's only a couple minutes long, but if you have a cue that is 6 or 7 minutes long, which is kind of long, 10 minutes long for a long sequence, you're going to want to be sparing with tempo changes. You're going to want to try to find ways to make that work consistently as you're putting it together without having to do violence to sections way down the line. And one way to do that is to use these tools related to meter change and syncopation to make it work. Anyway, it's that basic rundown, and the time it took us to do a very short period, a short little piece of music. You're going to work a lot faster than this. You're going to have more creative material than what we're working with here. When you're working on an actual project, this is just made up superficially for a demonstration. It's not real. You'll have more investment in the material you're working with, and because of that, you'll work quicker with it. You'll work a lot faster on your own material. But anyway, that's a real-time demonstration of synchronizing music to picture and making the music support what's happening in the picture a little bit better. A little bit of a talk there about the physical things that happen as opposed to the emotional things that are happening, and how you can put weight on either or and add your thumb to the scale using the music to do so, to accentuate those moments in a way that the picture can't do just by itself. Anyway, best of luck with all of that, and happy composing.